Get ready to dive into our weekly compilation video roundup. Prepare for a roller coaster of captivating narratives, astonishing revelations, and hidden gems from the depths of the internet. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, assuring you're always in the loop for our newest releases. Whether you're seeking a dose of amusement during your tasks or simply aiming for an engaging escape, our content is tailor-made for you. So buckle up as we kickstart this adventure. Let's embark on a journey that promises to keep you hooked from start to finish. What's your biggest muck-up that you were never caught for? Story 1. I don't know if this would be the biggest, but it sure is up there. When I was 16 or 17, I was walking down the street late at night with two of my friends. One of us had acquired a handful of M80s, illegal in the state we were in. We began lighting them and throwing them in the street. Anybody who has ever been near one while it explodes know they sound like a cannon. After a couple of explosions, a spotlight hits us and a man yells, "Freeze!" We broke fast towards a dirt road that led up a mountain. The spotlight was gaining on us fast, much faster than we could run. The whole time this man was ordering us to stop, and it was at the point of near exhaustion that the light suddenly went out and the yelling turned to silence. At this point, I believe we were speed walking in the pitch black while trying to catch our breath. We cut off the road and walked through the woods, home. One of my friends that was with me that night was a camp counselor. The first day of camp, the children were to receive a lecture from a police officer on bicycle safety. He said the officer showed up in all of his cycling gear and stressed that the most important part of bicycle safety is always wearing your helmet. He then took his helmet off, revealing a giant incision with several stitches. "I want to show you what can happen when you don't wear a helmet," he said. "Not too long ago, some kids were lighting off firecrackers at the end of my lawn. I didn't have time to put on my helmet and I chased after them on this bike. They ran up a very sandy road and I lost control of my bike in the dark. I hit a very soft area of sand and was thrown over my handlebars head first into a giant rock." My friend said he froze up as the cop explained how he had to find his way back to his house, bleeding profusely in the dark. We never got caught, but we were so thankful he sustained his injuries and everything turned out okay. 20 years later, we still get a good laugh out of it whenever the three of us get together. Ooh, if that officer had not survived, that whole story is just one thing away from like the plot of a horror movie of being haunted by a cop coming back from the grave to seek revenge. That's what I was thinking. What about you? Story 2. Me and my buddy ran a theft ring out of the electronics section of the big box store we worked at. What? Over the course of 2 years, we probably moved about $45,000 worth of iPods, gaming gear, games, CDs, speakers, you name it. One day, we slipped up and almost got caught, and they had us on watch because they noticed how much stuff had been disappearing. Then some dongweed that fondled our sleeping friend at a party once got wind of it, he worked in receiving, and decided he wanted some of the action. The idiot swiped an entire shipment of 10 PS3s and 2 TVs in one shift and went down for the whole thing. My buddy got promoted to customer service, and I became the garden center supervisor. 2009 was hilarious. It's not something I would advise doing, nor would I do it again. I really didn't care, though, and honestly still don't. The other guy didn't get in trouble for what we did because they didn't quite know the extent of what was going on. We weren't the only ones. The front end was going bonkers. He just took all the suspicion off us. He also didn't get arrested or anything. I guess they couldn't prove anything, so they found another reason to fire the guy, which he already had coming. So I didn't feel all that bad for him. It's a huge international retailer, and no one was really the wiser. I view it as essentially victimless. I would never do it at anything like a mom and pop shop or an owner franchise chain or whatever, or even a specialty place like a Best Buy. This wasn't a Best Buy? What big box place was this? It was more of a stick in the butt of a corporation. It wasn't even for a gain. Well over 75% the time we weren't selling anything, we were just giving it away. I got my friend's mom a new cell phone when she couldn't afford one. I once saw a kid drop an old iPod and break it and just gave him the one I was using because I knew I could get a new one. I own nothing of what we took, and neither does my buddy. I think I made about $150 over 2 years and got like an ounce of pot over the 2 years. It's not something I'm going to tell my kids about, but it was fun to play Robin Hood. No one got hurt in any way, and I can't change a thing about it. I never felt any sort of regret for it, and at this point, I doubt I ever will. Really, kind of a victimless crime, but really, 10 PS3s? It always seems like the PlayStations are the ones that end up being the hardest to get a hold of because scalpers always take those suckers and before anyone else can actually pay a fair price for them. But these guys just sound like they were doing, like they said, the Robin Hood thing. I'm not going to weigh in on it, but fun story. Story 3. I was doing an internship at one of the big media firms in the country as a video technician. I did it on a voluntary basis because I had days left between my studies, and it would look darn diddly good on my CV. My main responsibility was loading captured video into the system and preparing it for editing. Most of what came in was recorded on tapes. Digital cameras weren't all the way there yet, so when loading video into the system, the entire length of the tape had to be run. You can see why they could use an intern for this. Most of the material I had to load was for late evening news or shows that were only coming on days later, so there never was too much pressure or stress involved. But every once in a while, material came in that had to be loaded right that instant. For example, for the news 20 minutes later. I had been doing it for some time and was given the trust of also doing the more time-sensitive pieces, so every video that came in went by me. Upon entering my editing cell at some point, there was a videotape running that wasn't mine, and my tape had been taken out. So I stopped it, took it out, and just restarted my tape that had been stopped. As it turns out, this was footage meant for the headline of that evening's news, which went on 10 minutes after I stopped the loading of the video. When they came looking for the images and told me where it was, I told them the tape had run its length, and they assumed that the guy who started loading it made a mistake, which he was known for doing when he was under stress. So the evening news never got the footage for its headline that evening, and they blamed the other guy. Sorry, Martin. Did Martin get fired? Did you do something nice for Martin, even if you weren't going to let him know what was going to happen about this? Story 4. I accidentally set fire to a supermarket. Me and a few friends were like 12 and had just discovered fire. So we bought boxes of matches and were just doing tricks with it, if you can believe that. One of them is putting the match top down on the side of the box. Hold it down with your left hand, and with the right hand, flick it away while igniting it. Great fun. Until one day, one of those matches fell in a big container parked behind the supermarket. This was at the loading dock with a big sliding hatch into the building. We thought nothing of it and went to get some candy. When we returned, we saw smoke coming out of the container. We panicked and threw open the container. This allowed for air to get to the flames, and now the fire started to roar pretty good. We tried to extinguish it with big plastic crates that also stood behind the store, but they too started burning and melting, and finally the sliding hatch started to catch on fire as well. Scared out of our minds, we realized we couldn't contain this fire and ran like heck. I lived 10 minutes away and watched the smoke from my bedroom window and heard the sirens of the fire truck. No one got hurt, but they had to rebuild a section of the building. They expanded at the same time, so I like to think I just sped up a decision that was already made. I didn't play with fire anymore after that. Story 5. This happened when I was 14, and I still can't believe I got away with it. I was on the school coach on the way to school when it started snowing. The roads became clogged with traffic and slowed to a crawl. Almost immediately, I noticed a cramping pain in my stomach. I tried to ignore it. The pain built to a crescendo, to the point where I couldn't even enjoy the Simpsons episode I had downloaded on my first-gen iPod Touch. Eventually, we neared the school, and I thought I was going to make it. However, the coach missed the usual turn, adding an extra incalculably painful 5 minutes to the journey. It was at this point I made my fatal error, and decided to release a little fart to try to relieve the pressure. Horrible, molten poo shot from my anus and bubbled its way along my thighs and down my trousers. More and more gushed out, like a tidal wave of rancidity. The smell was horrendous. It burnt the nostrils. Someone laughed, "Ew, did you poop yourself or something?" How I laughed along with them, while my dark gray school trousers hid my shame. The second we got off the coach, I waddled to the nearest toilets, binned my trousers, and changed into my gym kit. We had a little shop on campus, so I was able to buy some more trousers. I stank of poo all day, and 10 years later, no one realized I pooped myself on school property. People who make $100,000 plus a year. What do you do? Story 1. Certified registered nurse anesthesiast. $85 an hour. 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. Best job ever. Wow, this blew up. Sorry I can't find all the questions to answer, but here are some quick ideas. It's easy to find out how to become a CMA online. Nurse to ICU to grad school. When looking at CMA schools, pick the cheap one. As long as you have a license, you can get a job. No one cares if you went to school. Anesthesia school is hard. You have to be smart, and you have to be willing to teach yourself. It's also a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. In my program, 85% was a failing grade. However, when you're playing with people's lives, what is okay to forget? Anesthesia is 99% boredom and 1% terror. It's how you respond when someone tries to perish that makes all the difference. You can stay calm and follow your training, and you will be fine. However, one guy I know unalived himself because his pediatric case went bad, and he felt it was his fault. Yes, I play with more narcotics than many illicit substance dealers. 1 in 10 anesthesia providers will have a problem with ADDI and substance diversion in their career. Don't be that person. Lastly, CRNA versus anesthesiologist. I'm not touching that. Cheers. I mean, good hours and good pay, but this is people's lives you're talking about. You cannot just go in and half do the job. You're dealing with people's lives, and it seems like there's an addiction problem going on here. Would you take that risk? Would you be willing to do that? Part of it, there seems to be enough downtime to where you can decompress, hopefully. Story 2. Catastrophe adjuster for a large insurance company. Make near $125K. Neat because I get to see all parts of the country, help people at their worst get what they need, and it's really widened my worldview and made me much more open-minded. I'm also a Diamond member for life with 3 major hotel brands and have more flight miles than I could ever use in my life, really. Company-paid cars and other expenses are really nice, too. Also help pay for my wife to accomplish her dream of becoming a teacher. Sucky part is that I spend an average 3 weeks of every month at a time and about 280 nights a year in hotels gone from my wife and family. Missed the birth and almost entire first year that my only nephew has been alive, so he doesn't even know me at all, and also wasn't home for my grandpa when he passed away. Every job has its positives and negatives. Honestly, I'd give back all the money I've made and go back to making $40K at my old job if I could get the last 2 years of my family and friend time that I missed back. Money to buy things is nice. Experiences with those who matter are nicer. Life lessons there, peeps. This one sounds like it has more of a downside than an upside. I mean, how much time can he find to take off to be with their family? It sounds like it's more for people who don't have a lot of ties with people. But with the money you're making, it sounds like they could retire early and then actually living a life. What do you think? Story 3. Plumber. Y'all's poop costs a lot of money, yo. Edit. Damn, so no, I don't work for the union. But we get paid a base hourly wage, so $35 an hour, plus 20% of the job that's sold. Installers get 12% of the job if needed or hourly. I'm currently working dispatch for the company, and they're putting me in a truck for a ride-along to start as an apprentice. I wanted to go into HVAC, but I'm not in a hot area, and water and poop is everywhere. School was not an option for me since I've been in debt since I was born. I pull in 18 hours and get a raise to 27 hours plus commission once I become an apprentice at this company. Everyone but one guy is friendly, and I encourage anyone still in high school to give any trades a thought. You can make great money in less time than your peers, and I wish I started when I was 18 or 19. Also, can y'all stop using flushable wipes? It's not good for your pipes. I had never considered trades. Everyone kept saying computers were the future. Computers were the future. Even in LA when I was driving around, there was trade schools right there in downtown. How many people here have worked a trade? What kind is it? Let me know. Story 4. I'm a stripper. Edit. I work 1 to 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, 6 to 8 hour shifts, but it takes time to get ready, so it's kind of longer. I pay to work, roughly $80 to $100 a night. My worst night was negative $12. My best night was $2,400. My average is $700 to $800. $500 or $1,000 a night is common too. I usually don't sweat the amount in a night. I tally up the week. I like to make $2,000 a week, so $8,000 a month. I love the freedom I have to pick my own schedule and make this kind of money. It's fun too. The main drawback for me, other than creeps and the lack of rights we have as workers, is that it's not intellectually challenging and there's no way to move up or learn more. I'm 22, been dancing for 2.5 years, and I'm already over it. I'm going back to school, have my bachelor's already, to take some science courses, and then I'm applying to med school. Story 5. Me, engineer, bringing in about $100,000 after bonus, and about $20,000 on the side with an unrelated consulting gig. My wife sells tech. In a good year, we make about $300,000 together in a fairly low cost of living area. We both love our work and we're both healthy and happy. It's a comfy, nice lifestyle, but neither of us are ostentatious. I drive a 25-year-old Land Cruiser. She drives a 7-year-old Mercedes. We buy what we want/need, eat good food, drink good wine, and we save aggressively towards retirement. We don't like a lot of stuff, but the stuff we do buy, we buy quality. And we're concerned more with value than cost. Neither of us come from money, so we appreciate every day that we have it. Story 6. I make soap. I spent 6 years in college and got 3 degrees in math, chemistry, and chemical engineering, and was hired out of school as a chemical engineer. I do research for a large company that makes industrial chemical products, mostly detergents, sanitizers, and other types of cleaners. Most of my research focuses on inventing new chemistry for industrial dishwashing and laundry products. My research has led to several patents and records of inventions, which is cool and stuff, but at the end of the day, I just basically invent better soap. I cannot be the only person that saw I Make Soap and thought, this person is Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Only when I read further when he was doing everything with the company was it different, but that's what I first initially thought. Story 7. Data analyst for an insurance company. I take data and turn it into useful information. At least that's what PowerPoint said that's what I do. SAS, SQL, and Excel. I have a degree in journalism, realized I hated it, took a job answering phones at the insurance company, and just got lucky. Edit. A lot of folks are asking for advice on getting into this field. I don't have a ton since I just kind of fell into it. A lot of people in this comment thread do, though, so read through it for some great stuff. Story 8. I'm a major gift officer at a university. I just broke $100,000 this year. I've been in the field for around 4 years. Those first 4, I made around $82,000. Bachelor's degree and a background in B2C sales. Not a terribly strong one. I sold life insurance before this. Some of my colleagues sold cars and boats. Some never sold anything. Getting into it seems to be a matter of persistence and just hitting it off with interviewers. Once you have experience, it's easy to find work. I get approached by recruiters regularly. I travel a lot, though. At least 1 week per month, I'm in a different time zone. At least another week on regional travel. Story 9. User experience or product designer. We make sure the software you use solves a problem for you and that it's usable. We don't make it pretty. And it upsets us when others say, just draw the screen. We interview the people who will use software to make sure what we draw actually helps them. Many switch from first careers in project management, architecture, business, or visual arts. $80K starting salary in Tech City, up to $200K if you're really good and 8+ years in. Too long didn't read? UX designer. We make sure software makes sense. I've worked in agencies and production places where I've done similar stuff. I worked on everything, but I did work on designs for various software or certain websites. But it was usually already set into place. I was just following the design someone else laid out. I did not make this kind of money, though. What's your "anyway, we're married now" story? Story 1. When I was 13, I met a girl, Debbie, at summer camp. She talked about her horses and attending the big interstate fair every year with her 4-H group. On my 13th birthday, I went to the fair and looked Debbie up. She agreed to go to the carnival with me, but wasn't all that interested. I can't blame her. 13-year-old me was a dweeb. She brought along her annoying girlfriend Renee to keep me from getting too fresh, which worked. I was determined to get Debbie alone. Not that I knew exactly why, so I took the girls on the tip-top ride. Renee got sick, got off the ride, and puked. Debbie and Renee used that as an excuse to split, and I never saw Debbie again. 3 years later, a beautiful new girl with long black hair moved out on my school bus line. I was immediately interested and began a much smoother conversation. We went out a couple weeks later and went to a carnival. She took me on the tip-top, and I puked. That girl was Renee. We were both 3 years older, and anyways, we're married now. That's pretty cool. I was wondering if it was Renee or if it was going to be a random girl. I guess Renee had to make things even with them for the previous encounter on the tip-top ride so they can move forward with their relationship, but that really worked out well for both of them, so great. Story 2. In 2nd grade, I was voted class favorite. Why was this ever a thing? Horrible idea for kids' self-esteem. Along with a weird fella who I had trouble believing anyone even voted for because he was quite reserved and bland. In the 5th grade, I remember the same guy getting called to the front of the class to write his answer on the board. He was awkward and dressed accordingly. The girl seated behind me very quietly commented, his booty looks like it's eaten his pants." Only I heard this, but it was a humorously accurate observation. After 5th grade, I never saw him or heard from him again until we were 21. He showed up at my house to purchase a vehicle we had for sale after my dad passed exactly 1 month earlier. I only recognized him after my mom wrote his name on a receipt for purchasing the car. I remember him of our time as class favorites, and my mom made a show of breaking out the yearbooks. Anyways, we're happily married now. Not too bad. I wonder if they ever brought up the comment about the booty-eating pants, or pants-eating booty, whichever it was. Did that ever come up, or did they ever see the other girl again? Who knows? Story 3. I met my husband when I got a new job at a grocery store, and the guy from the deli came up and yelled at me for hanging up on customers when I couldn't figure out the phone transfer process. He was the guy from the deli, and anyway, we're married now. I literally dread when anyone calls my work and asks to be transferred. I rarely do it, and I don't think I've ever done it successfully. I give them the right number first and say, and now I'll try to transfer you. Call that number if I accidentally hang up. Pretty sure I hang up every time. Oh, kids, wait until you find out what your mom was like in college. So, really, don't think we haven't heard it all, done it all. Whoa, Mom, you did what? Congrats. Were those comments the same? Were they supposed to match that story beforehand? In any case, I felt that way about those old phones too when you had to transfer. I don't think I could ever get anything like that right. I was really afraid of getting yelled at for accidentally cutting off someone important. Story 4. Reached the church earlier than expected. Was about to go out and have a smoke, but stopped and just prayed casually, like talking to God. Mostly about why all the girls I meet are non-compatible. Long-term relationship was out of the question. Suddenly, I saw a vision of a girl walking towards the altar and just looked at the cross and said, "Why not her? She looks nice." We ended up matching on websites online. Turns out her dad and I had been talking all along in the church, but didn't know they were family. Got married to her in less than 6 months from the date of my casual prayer. No one, even my wife, believes this. Don't care. Anyway, we're married now. Story 5. I met a girl online about 20 years ago one summer after college. Found out we live in nearby towns, so decided to get together. Go out on a few dates. Drive by local preschool. Me. Hey, that's where I went to preschool. Her. That's where I went to preschool. That day, we found a preschool class photo where we are 2 feet from each other. A few months later, my dad finds some old footage of a Christmas play our preschool class put on. We're standing right next to each other. Story 6. A friend of my brother's had a drinking problem in college. One day, he crashed his truck in the side of the road, and a man walked up and said, "You okay?" "Yep." "You drunk?" "Yep." "Get in my car. I'll get in here and tell the cops I lost control." The guy got in the man's car, got in the back seat, and sat next to his future wife. Edit. The stranger's daughter is now his wife. Wow. That guy really took a hit for that stranger. I mean, forget the whole, anyway, we're married now. I don't know if I'd be able to take anything like that for someone else that I just barely knew. That is incredible. I wonder what kind of trouble the stranger got into. Did he have to serve some time or do something? What happened? Story 7. A friend of mine was secretly playing Pokemon at high school when he found a picnicker with the same name as me. He found that funny, so he whispered it to another mutual friend who was sitting next to me. Then the guy on the other side said, "What's so funny?" And they said, "Look, it's a character named for the Fuzzy Bunny 1. And he said, "Who?" So later in the week during a lunch period, they introduced him to me. Anyway, we're married now. He also insists I include the line, "A friend of ours set a table on fire at the wedding, but anyway, we're married now," because he thinks that's funnier. Story 8. I had a cold and went on a date to an Irish pub. I was eating bangers and mash and had the urge to cough. I tried to keep my mouth shut, but just wound up spraying his face with gravy and mashed potatoes through my pursed lips. I was still coughing, so I took a sip of my drink to soothe my throat. It was beer. The bubbles tickle my throat more. I also spit that all over his face. He stared at me in disgusted horror as gravy, mashed potatoes, and beer dripped down his face onto his shirt. I laughed and laughed and laughed, making my apologies sound very insincere. Anyways, we're married now. Thank goodness our booth had high backs, so only he suffered. Story 8. The first time I really hung out with this guy, he threw up all over me. Anyways, we're married now. Wow, same though. Took my now fiance to a Chinese place that has Mai Tais for $5. He threw up all over the bathroom while I sang karaoke. I insisted he wasn't driving his car home. I walked him to my car with his pants falling off. Anyways, he threw up and got vom beans in my tape deck, and we're engaged now. I'm still mad about the tape deck, though I have a different car now. I still had so many days I couldn't play my tapes. For clarification, he had a burrito for lunch, so that's why it was straight beans in my car. He doesn't drink much anymore. If there was ever an argument for phones and iPods and Bluetooth connections to the car, that's it. That is it right there. Nope, I'm just so glad I don't have to deal with CD cases and all that tape stuff anymore. Story 10. So years ago, one of my friends met a trans woman for the first time, and for some reason made a point of telling me that he is totally cool with treating trans women like any other women, but couldn't see himself getting together with one because he's not into penises, you know? Anyway, I came out and started transitioning a while after that. One thing led to another, and we've been together for 4 years at this point. Story 11. I was working at a video game shop, and he was hired to DJ the midnight release of a game I didn't care for. He comes in, waits for the giant line of people finalizing their pre-order before midnight. When he gets to the register, I ask him if he's here for the premiere, but he says he wouldn't be caught dead playing that game and proceeds to purchase a different older game I later found out he already has. He asks me when I finish my shift and to swing by the DJ table when I'm off. I do indeed swing by, and now we've been married going on 5 years with 2 cats and a recently purchased home. He proposed by sticking the ring inside the case of the game he bought that night.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
What is the craziest real-life plot twist story you have? Story 1. I was best friends with a neighbor kid growing up. He was always over at my house or I was at his, and I had a major crush on him pretty much since I was old enough to walk. But it never seemed like he liked me back or that I even noticed that I liked him. So we grew up, he started dating people, and I was jealous as hell over it. I started dating people while still pining over him. I figure he just sees me as a little kid, I was a year younger than him, or a little sister, and nothing will ever come out of it, so I try to put my feelings aside. Then, when he turned 16, his family moved out of state and we lost contact. I got over my feelings and time moved on. Fast forward a few years later, and we reconnect online, start talking, and then this dude casually mentions in a conversation about how he had a giant crush on me growing up and always wanted to ask me out. He tells me that he even asked my mother for permission to ask me out, and she said no, so he never ended up doing it. My mom never told me about this at all. My mind is blown. My entire childhood of pining after this guy, my first ever crush, feels like a lie. At this point, I'd long since put aside the feelings I had for him and kind of gotten over the crush, but I still felt a lot of residual nostalgia from being 15 and craving Tool for the first time in my life. He was still into me, and I was debating whether I wanted to start something with him or not, mostly so I wouldn't have to live with the what if of it all, tossing the idea around while we kept in touch. Then suddenly, he stops messaging me. I'm like, because our talking was going well, and I didn't think I did anything to make him want to start ghosting me. I message a mutual friend of ours and ask if she knows what's up, and she tells me the guy was arrested for beating a dude who owed him money to termination. He's in prison right now serving a life sentence. I never got that tool. The end. Somewhere your mother is smiling at her decision. At first, I was so mad at that mom for just doing what she did and not telling her. That is just awful, but the way it worked out, I'm sure that this woman is going to keep this information about the guy from the mom so she doesn't go into a perpetual loop of I told you so. Story 2. First roommate in college was super Catholic and did not approve of my older boyfriend. As an attempt to save me, she thought of inviting me to her friend's celibacy celebration while I was doing homework in the Commons. A chill wind picked up, and I sensed it was time for me to leave. As I turned around, I saw the only doorway blocked by a circle of people holding hands and quietly chanting, "No spicy until 30! No spicy until 30!" As I approached to try to break through the circle and get the hell out, their chanting got louder. I eventually got out, but this chick threw away all of my high-end spicy toys and S-Girl, a certain type of girl, self-unaliving girl book. Can't say that word. I was done with living with her and got out after just a quarter. A year later, a few friends and I were comparing horror stories about roommates we've had, and I shared my story. A new friend told hers about a super noisily self-stimulating lesbian. None of the others had much to say, so they voted between the two. Mine won by a small margin, only to find out both of our stories were about the same roommate 1 year apart. Oh, also, she did not throw out my spicy toys or my self-unaliving girl book. This is a perfect example of Shakespeare's "The lady doth protest too much, methinks," or the more modern "He who smelt it dealt it." Side note, it's better to be an outspoken lesbian than a hypocrite. I saw the twist coming as I was reading it. I was hoping that was it, and it's just, in a way, it's just kind of karma. That's kind of a long con to go through just to get at someone else's spicy adult toys. Story 3. Used to play an online browser game back in 2003, 2006-ish. The game itself wasn't really great, but the community was what made it work. Got to know a lot of people from my guild, and we had an IRC channel that I was one of the main regulars on. Another regular there was a guy from a different country, though also in the EU. We became kind of good online friends, but after we stopped playing the game, contact became increasingly scarce before petering out completely at some point. By then, we did have Facebook and friends, but we never really talked. 2 years ago, in a nostalgic moment, I decided to hit some people up again from that game. See if we can have a sort of reunion thing or something. Maybe. I send a message to the guy, and our conversation went something like this. Me: "Hey man, long time no talk. What's up in your life these days?" Him: "Oh hey, I live in your country now. With my girlfriend I met online." Me: "That's funny. Whereabouts?" Him: "A town that's literally 10 minutes driving away from me." We talk some more, and the subject of work comes up. He then tells me he works in a different city about 20 minutes further. The city he names is where I was born and where my mother works. I ask him where exactly, and the place he names is right across the canal from my mother's business. Literally a stone's throw away. Funnily enough, I still haven't met him because we fell out of contact again right after that due to other things going on in our lives. But we plan on meeting up sometime soon. Had they ever talked about where he lived before? I don't know if they had mentioned that before. It might not be so much of a coincidence that he ended up where in this guy's hometown, because it was probably kind of in the back of his mind. But cool that they're able to meet up again. Story 4. My dad was adopted as a baby because his parents were both teens from Catholic families. They were promptly sent to boarding schools across the country from each other, and that was that. Many years later, my dad was researching his genetics to look for potential hereditary health problems and decided to put out a search for his parents. He eventually contacted and met with them separately, but both his mom and dad also got in contact with each other. As it turns out, they both had grown kids and deceased spouses. So they decided to meet up and eventually started dating. About 5 years ago, my brother and I went with my dad to a family reunion where we discovered his parents were once again in love and had invited both of their families to my grandpa's farm for a big weekend party. I met close to 100 people I was somehow related to, including dozens of cousins and several aunts and uncles. It was all thanks to my dad that these two huge families came together and made new connections. So he, along with my brother and I, were treated like celebrities all weekend, and everyone wanted to get to know us. My dad's adoptive mother perished over a year ago, but now he has two new parents who are relatively young and extremely interesting people for him and my family to spend time with. We go skiing at my grandpa's condo in Montana and enjoy summer activities at his huge farm property in Alberta. The whole experience taught me that you're never too old for a new love, and I'm happy to be able to have grandparents for many more years to come. Whoa, that blows my mind. Sounds like something that only happens in a Hallmark movie. Story 5. When I was 5 years old, I remember going to a wedding reception for one of my friend's older sisters. I vaguely remember that it was scandalous that she was young, 18, just graduated high school, and he was much older. That's all I knew, and it didn't come up much in conversation with my friend or their family. 10 years later, I'm in high school on the debate team, just chatting with the coach about random stuff when we get to talking about the team before he was coach. He told me that before him, another teacher was the coach who got kicked out for having a relationship with one of the students on the team. He told me the names, and my jaw hit the floor. That was the wedding reception I was at. What's the worst birthday present you've received? Story 1. Clothes on layaway, which I never got. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept, I'm not sure if it's employed outside of America, honestly. Layaway was a system where you could essentially reserve items. If you found something you liked but didn't have the money, you took it to the layaway counter where it was kept until you had paid the item in full. I was taken clothes shopping, something which rarely happens as we never had much money growing up, and told I had a $300 limit. I was ecstatic. The clothes I had been wearing for years, which had rips, tears, holes, stains, and had been the subject of plenty of ridicule from many people at school, were finally on their way out for new stylish clothes. After spending an hour picking out a variety of different designs and brands, we work our way to the register, only for my mother to stop me and exclaim, "I forgot my cash." "Not to worry," she said. "We'll put it on layaway and come back for it tomorrow." There was never a tomorrow. She did this many times during my life with different events, Christmas, Easter, and it never hurt any less. As a result, I don't bother celebrating my birthday as an adult. I always have a tiny vision in the back of my head of all those clothes fit for an excited 10-year-old boy collecting dust in the back of an aging store alone. No, I never told my mother about this, but it would not have mattered otherwise. I have no idea why she did this. I've always suspected her to be bipolar and under constant stress, which leads to moments like this. I am the oldest of the 3 boys, so I often gave up many things so my brothers could benefit, sometimes willingly, mostly unknowingly. I can't say her true intentions that day were to get my hopes up and dash them. However, this was not the first time she did something of this nature. She promised me a computer on my 12th birthday, something I'd wanted for many years. But when I constantly asked her where it was the following week, a week after my birthday, she said she had taken it back because I was bad. I could go on, but I don't want to bash her. Despite what she's done to me, she's still my mother, and I respect that. Of all the stories in here, this one made me the saddest. The thought of you being so excited and then disappointed makes me want to cry. It's great that this person is respecting their mom. It sounds like he's trying to reach and find out what the issue is, and not just have it be a blame my mother is evil kind of thing. I wouldn't be too upset if this person was just a little more upset about this. Maybe not to confront their mother, but to just dig deeper and find out what the problem is. Story 2. My mom and stepdad married the day after my 10th birthday. From then on, my mom told me I had 10 birthdays, but they hadn't had that many anniversaries, so my birthday didn't matter. And of course, my stepdad is a real tool, so it's not like he disagreed. They generally got me things like socks, and on my 16th, my stepdad grounded me for being on the internet working on my summer project, some extra credit at the start of the term for one of my classes. When he got home from work, we only had one computer, and he needed it for what I assume was corn right then. I was grounded the entire summer and not allowed to use the computer, nor go to the library since I was grounded. I really wanted the extra credit because the teacher was a notorious hard roller. I didn't get it, but I did well anyhow. Fast forward to my next birthday. In the year in between, I'd been horribly depressed and taken to self-mutilation. Mom finds out and sticks me in therapy only after my aunt tells her she has to. My family has a history of depression. My mom tried to commit self-unaliving a few months before she married my stepdad. So I spent a few months before my birthday in therapy, and at one point, birthdays come up. I tell my therapist that they haven't done anything for mine and my mom's reason. She keeps the shrink face on and just nods, jotting down a note. Well, come my birthday, I get a card in the mail from her, a CD of a band I liked, and a subscription to a magazine I told her I liked but didn't get to read anywhere but her waiting room. Popular Science. My mom was livid and canceled further appointments. My stepdad brought me home a hedgehog, a pet I'd often said I really wanted. Thankfully, he had the tendency to collect strange animals, so everything I'd need for one was already in the house, as he brought it home in a box. Nothing else with it. I bought it hedge food promptly after setting it up in a cage. So that was sweet of him. He listened and knew what I wanted, and knew I wanted something, and maybe he felt bad for what my mom did, at least in part. I loved that silly hedgehog, too. Aw, well, it sounds like there was kind of a turnaround for like the stepdad. Maybe they had some inroads there. And it sounds like that therapist really wanted to work things out with the entire family and not have it be something where the kid was being blamed for everything. Story 3. Not mine, my sister's. It was her 9th birthday. I was 6, and the party was, for a 9-year-old, off the hook. We had all the kids from the neighborhood, the cousins, school friends, and hell, some kids just showed up. Big cake, balloons, music, and all the parents were drinking wine and laughing. Things got rowdy. We were running around the house playing tag or something. Heck, I don't know, I was 6. We might have just been running around. My cousin, 2 years senior and 30 pounds heavier, comes barreling down the stairs. I turn the corner, he slams right into me, and I am literally flying through the air. The house was pretty old at the time and featured a second front door, like a screen door, only made of glass. If it helps, imagine Grandpa Simpson saying, "It was the style at the time," because I've never seen another like it. I smash side first into the thing, break it into a million pieces. My entire arm is cut up, including an especially impressive slice right along the inside of my elbow and from my upper eyelid to hairline through my eyebrow. Blood everywhere, kids screaming, my sister like a freaking trooper trying to calm everyone down. It's been nearly 2 decades. I can still remember her calm as a dang army sergeant saying, "Okay, The party is over. Everyone find your parents, as I'm being hurried to the car. In the end, 15 stitches on the arm, 5 on the forehead, and I had to wear a cast for about a month. My sister fussed and fretted over me for nearly a year after that. Pretty traumatized. Oh, and I got her a Wonder Woman comic. I don't know what happened to it. Too long didn't read? I was body checked through a glass door and painted the porch red on my sister's 9th birthday, and she never got her present. You know, I think the sister deserves all the Wonder Woman comics she can get, because she acted like Wonder Woman in that. She was a hero. She took charge. She cared for her brother. Definitely sprang to action. Amazing. She didn't need the Wonder Woman comic. She deserves them, but she is Wonder Woman. Story 4. I was looking forward to my 8th birthday for weeks because I had found my present in my parents' closet. It was a sick T-Rex figurine wearing these freaking cool as hell dark sunglasses. I couldn't sleep the night before the big day. I lay in bed wide awake for about 5 hours just shivering because I was so excited. I woke up and actually got sick at one stage. Pretty weird, but I was an excitable kid, I guess. On the day of my birthday, I was literally sweating at the dinner table after the cake, and my brow was dripping wet because I knew my mom was going into her room to get the present. My knees were shaking uncontrollably, and I started getting slightly dizzy. I thought it was just the sugar or the whipped cream from my cake that was making me nauseous, so I didn't say a word. I just sat there about to explode, staring intently with furious concentration at the door. When she finally came in, literally as she was mouthing the words, "Happy birthday," an excruciating pain shot up from where my appendix used to be, had gotten it removed a year earlier, and into just underneath my ribs. I tried my best to ignore it because I wanted that T-Rex so freaking much. It got worse and worse, and I was trying so hard to keep a straight face and just keep staring at my mom, who had stopped talking and was now looking at me in horror because I had gone beetroot red. One more shot of pain, and I blacked out. Woke up in the hospital. It turns out I had a hernia. I was so excited I had burst a few blood vessels in my temples from trying to suppress the pain. Still got the T-Rex, so I guess it wasn't that bad. What is your favorite useless fact? Story 1. The most powerful bomb ever tested, the Tsar bomb, was the explosive equivalent of dropping 2 Mounts Everest from the same height. Edit. Because nobody asked, the energy of 1 Mount Everest dropped from 10,500 meters is about 1.40552 times 10 to the power of 12 kilograms by 9.81 ms to the power of negative 2x times 10,500 meters equals 1.45 times 10 to the 17 power joules. There's a lot more technical stuff here, so be prepared. Edit. Proposal to change all measurements to Mount Everest. 1 Mount Everest of length is the current height of Mount Everest, or about 8,850 meters. 1 Mount Everest of time is the time it takes Mount Everest to grow a Mount Everest of length taller, or about 6.97734 times 10 to the 13th power seconds. 1 Mount Everest of mass is the mass of Mount Everest, or about 1.40522 times 10 to the 12th power kilograms. 1 Mount Everest of velocity is the speed at which Mount Everest grows, or about 1.2683968 times 10 to the negative 10th power ms to the power of negative 1, or minus 1. I'm not sure which one that is. 1 Mount Everest of force is the force it takes to accelerate a mass of Mount Everest with 1 Mount Everest or velocity, or a reasonable 178 newtons. Edit 3. For those very, very few interested, Mount Everest of energy, using the definition W equals F times M, I don't know what any of those stand for, conflicting with the energy earlier calculated, and power can be found in the comments somewhere. They are energy, about 1,577,734 J, I believe that means joules. power about 2.261225511 times 10 to the power of negative 8 W. I don't know if that's watts or what. I am taking this way too far and way too seriously. That's the fun thing about doing this job and reading this stuff, like trying to react to this. I'm just confronted with all this stuff, and I'm barely reaching back to my high school and college math to be able to read these equations and symbols correctly. Story 2. Pineapples contain an enzyme called bromelain that works fairly quickly in breaking down animal cells. This is why eating pineapple causes that burning feeling. The pineapple is eating you as you're eating it. The strawberry also contains the same amount of seeds, regardless of its stage of maturity. It always contains the same amount of seeds. A slice of watermelon has roughly the same amount of sugar content as a small candy bar, but contains a lot more vitamins and minerals. While we're at watermelons, they also originally grew in dry, arid grasslands. If you can surprise a person as they're about to sneeze, you can interrupt and stop it entirely. Try yelling, "Watermelon!" at the next person who's about to sneeze. Depending on the color of the person's skin that you're saying that to, that could be a pretty dangerous prospect, especially if you don't know them. You're probably going to get some very, very disturbing looks of cancellation on you. Maybe try something else, cantaloupe, something a bit safer, if you're going to yell at sneezing people. Story 3. If Project Manhattan had fallen behind or wasn't working, the U.S. had a working plan to drop giant bombs of artificially hibernated bats with nitroglycerin bombs on their backs over Japan. They would float down just before dawn, slowly warming up out of hibernation, then fly out of the contraption. When the sun came up, they would hide in the roofs of all the buildings, which were wood in 1940s Japan. Then the bombs would go off, Tokyo would burn to the ground. They tested it out outside of a base in Texas, New Mexico, and it worked perfectly. Other than the fact that they miscalculated the wind and the bats flew back to the base instead of the small fake town they built and burned down the flight line. It sounds like they were relying heavily on Plan A to make that work. Kind of makes you wonder if this Plan B was successful, we wouldn't have the Godzilla movies we'd have today. We'd have, as our main protagonist, a giant explosive bat rampaging across the cities. Story 4. Up until the 1970s, it was illegal to fly a kite in the downtown area of Chicago. I found out because when my friends and I were 15, we bought some cheap kites at the dollar store and decided to take them with us downtown to fly them. We started trying to fly them by the Art Institute when we got stopped by a cop. He told us that kites were not allowed to be flown anywhere in the downtown area, and if he saw us doing it again, he would give us a $250 citation. It seemed kind of weird since Millennium and Grant Park were both in the downtown area, but we didn't argue. I looked it up years later and found out that it was a law, but it didn't apply to us then in the early 2000s. Dude was just being a tool. Story 5. There are 10 factorial seconds in 6 weeks. Oh, here's another one. 10 seconds equals open parens 10 times 6, close parens times 9 times 8 times 7 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 seconds equals 9 times 8 times 7 times open parens 5 times 4 times 3 close paren times 2 minutes equals 9 times 8 times 7 times 2 hours equals open parens 3 times 3 close parens times 8 times 7 times 2 hours 3 times open parens 38 close parens times 7 times 2 hours 3 times 7 times 2 days equals 32 weeks equals 6 weeks. I'm sure that's going to be of interest to somebody in watching this video. Story 6. Assume birthdays are an event. Then in a class of 23 kids, there's a 50% chance that 2 kids have the same birthday. Is counterintuitive at first. If there's 365 a year, how can there be a 50-50 chance with just 23 kids? It makes more sense, however, who realize that it's not just one birthday being Ed to 22 others. The first kid gets compared to 22 others, then the kid gets compared to 21 others, 22 minus the one who was already compared to, etc. You wind up with, here we go again, 22 plus 21 plus 20 plus 19 plus 18 plus 17 plus 16 plus 15 plus 14 plus 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. She's actually 253 comparisons being. 253 chances for a match. I really hope the Count from Sesame Street is watching this video. He's going to have a blast with this. But I'm sure there are a lot of math geeks out here that are probably going to be just having their minds blown by a lot of this stuff too. Also, there were a few words missing on this story, so hope you were able to follow along. I barely was able to. Story 7. Potato chips were made in the 1800s by a frustrated chef when a customer was complaining about how his French fries weren't crispy enough. The chef tried many times, and every time the customer complained. The chef got so frustrated that he cut the potato paper thin and fried them. The customer loved them, and the restaurant decided to keep making them. I just reacted to the last story, but I had to react to this one. See, did everyone understand that? Cool. That was interesting. I knew about that one, and I thought that one was fascinating. Basically, potato chips were invented because of an 1800s Karen. Fascinating. Story 8. The female human eye can't see a color difference measured in lab color values on a printed piece below a DE of 3 after staring at the piece for 15 seconds or more, unless they are large solids overlapping. The male eye generally can't discern the difference between a DE of 4. Women have more color cones in their eyes, which helps with this rather impressive ability, whereas men have less and are far more likely to be colorblind. I'm male and teach color reproduction methodology and science to marketing teams, etc. To me, beige is just beige. Let's move on.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.